Hey everyone, welcome to the Self-Awareness Journey podcast. I'm Melissa Albers.
And I'm JJ Parker. This podcast is for seekers, seekers of happiness and joy, seekers of a centered approach to success in life, seekers of their true, authentic selves.
Get ready for some real talk on everything from anxiety, emotions, and habits to love, compassion, and forgiveness. We know you'll be challenged and enlightened by this conversation. We're so glad you're here. Let's dive in.
Well, last night I had a tennis match,
Yay.
mixed doubles, which I really enjoy playing. And my partner and I, so this is the format is 2 sets. And then if you split the set, it's a tiebreaker.
Okay.
That lasts like an hour and a half.
Okay.
So like the USTA, like adult league rules. And so my partner and I get on the court, and the first set went really well. We actually won 6-0. We just kind of steamrollered over.
Wow.
I'm like,
That
wow.
is good. And this is your new old partner. You have a new
My new old partner. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. She's the one I played with like a ton years ago. And then we got mismatched on levels. Like I got bumped up. I couldn't play with her anymore. And then now we're back to playing together. So it was awesome. And we were feeling in the groove. Like everything was working. All our shots were going in. We're like, this is great. And then the second set rolls around.
Foreshadowing.
Yeah. And we lose the first game, which is fine. You know, it was bound to happen. And then we lost the second game. And then we lost the third game. And then we're like,
oh no.
And then we're like, okay, we just got to refocus. We just had a momentary lapse of focus, right?
Yep.
So we're just telling ourselves things like, okay, we've got to like dial back in, get back to how we were playing on the first set. Let's just get back to how we were playing. And we were trying to do that.
Yeah.
And then we lost the 4th game. And then I think we did hold 1 game, but we lost the second set 2-6. So it was quite a shift.
Yeah. I would say
Then we roll into a tiebreaker. And if anyone knows about tennis, one of the things that you want to make sure when you're going into like critical parts of the match is that like the energy is on your side.
Totally.
Like the momentum is on your side. Like,
Yep.
And it certainly was not.
So you lost is what I just heard you say.
So we lost
story.
the tiebreaker.
Oh, sad.
In kind of like a whiplash fashion. Like,
yeah, right.
Like,
it really
did so well the first set, and then we just got like smoked the second set in the tiebreaker.
That's weird, actually.
Yeah. And so then we were sitting after the match waiting for our other teammates to finish up, and we're like, what on earth happened? Like, how did we have such a shift? So one of the things that I love about tennis is that most of the time, the team that wins seems to be the one who can adapt or adjust their strategy.
Yeah, right. Of course. That makes sense. Yeah.
And so as we were reflecting, we're like, well, what strategy? Like, we made no strategy change. So
you just kept pounding down.
Yeah, I think we got what we kind of deserved. But then we thought, what did the other teams do? Like, what was their strategy change? And then I was like, I realized like, oh, their strategy change is they started targeting my partner. I hardly got any balls that whole second set. They just kind of took me out of the game.
Oh.
Which
cheaters.
Well, that's a great strategy.
I know it is.
I do that all the time. But if we would have noticed that, she and I actually 2 weeks ago practiced what we would do in that scenario.
Oh, wow.
So the frustrating thing, it wasn't that we lost. And the frustrating thing to me was that we didn't observe the strategy change that we needed to make soon enough.
Right.
And execute it.
Right.
So,
yeah. There's many things in sports that are the exact same way. I mean, if you're a football fan, which I am, you've been, have watched all of the leading up to the Super Bowl games. It's the whole thing. It's just that exact same thing. you watch the energy shift on each
Yeah.
side of the field, and it makes a huge difference no matter what your plan is, right?
Yeah. And I didn't play sports as a kid really,
Yeah.
like little pickup league things, but not like
Right.
where strategy really mattered.
Right.
And as an adult, I have like a new appreciation for strategy and sport. It's like really interesting.
Yeah.
And it's a great way to practice strategy. But when I was thinking about, obviously it's just a silly little tennis match.
Oh, right. That's how you
Yeah.
feel.
Silly little tennis match. When I come to you the next day, all super heated and
I know.
sideways because I lost.
I know.
A
couple of years ago, I remember when you were mad, it lasted like a week. Like you you were so mad.
I lost the championship. That was the championship.
Oh, yes. With your
nemesis. My arch nemesis. Yeah.
Can we just say his name? Can we just say his first name?
His name is Court.
I mean, who plays tennis with the first name of Court? Of course he's going to win. Okay, sorry.
I played with him so much since then, and he's such a great guy. But it was funny. It was so funny how triggered I got from him.
You were on fire.
So funny.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to go down that little rabbit hole, but I just think
so I think there's lots of times like at work where we have to make strategy changes.
Yeah.
And then I was actually thinking there's actually been quite a few times in my personal life where we had to make strategy changes.
I think this topic is so important because I don't think we think about life like that, but I think that's all life is. Like being able to lock into what's the bigger thing, right?
Yeah.
And then make your moves for that to happen.
Right. So to start off, the first part to me is observation. Like, how do you observe, or how do you sense or see or feel that maybe something needs changing?
Well, actually,
and it's not maybe aligning with where you want to go.
I don't think that's
where we
first...
start, or do we start somewhere else?
I don't think that's where we start. I think where we start is goals.
Oh, like where do you want to go?
Whether it's your intrinsic goal, whether it's your conscious goal, whether it's your subconscious goal based on the hierarchy of life, or your family dynamics, or your work life. You all have, we all have these things that we want in a bigger, broader perspective. Unless we're wandering aimlessly, which some of us do. But I think those are only little life patches. I think generally speaking, we do have an idea of the direction that we're moving. So if we can acknowledge what those things are, then that's where, if something isn't going as planned, then you have, that doesn't feel good, right? And it causes sort of this like, what's not right? So that's, I think it starts at the goal level.
I agree. I agree that it starts at the goal level. It's sometimes, at work we do, I think a lot of people do a pretty good job of like establishing goals and then trying to work towards them. That's kind of like part of the work routine.
Right.
But how often do you do that at home?
Oh, yeah. Actually, you're right. I think there's pockets that we do it at home more frequently and normally.
Yeah, I mean, there might be like some big of like big life strategy things, like when are we going to have kids? Are we going to buy a house?
Right.
Like maybe we're going to get a new car. Like there's like kind of like buying
financial decisions.
Or like family planning decisions, but or maybe like there's a kind of a big vacation or a thing you want to go do.
Right.
And maybe retirement would be another one of those giant targets.
Yeah.
But even like on a yearly basis, I kind of think like, do I have personal goals on a yearly basis that I actually...
Okay. The average person?
Sometimes
no.
I do.
You? Yes. You've got that dang form.
Yes, I know.
But I don't think the average person sits down with a spreadsheet like JJ Parker.
Oh, I should show you my new thing for 2025. We never even talked about that.
Oh, no, we didn't. Okay. Don't. No. Okay, save that.
I don't want to spoil it, but I'll show you the edge of it.
Oh my God, it's a full book. He just sneaked a picture into the screen, everybody, and it looked like about a 1.5 inch thick book with a hard cover.
Yeah, we'll go. We'll dive into that later. Well, I agree. Like, certainly goals. Like, you
Yeah.
got to have goals. You got to kind of figure out where
Right.
you're going.
Right.
Sometimes I feel like we've got, like you said, we've got these like unspoken or really almost like unconscious
Yeah.
goals
Yeah.
that we're working towards. And then what happens is if we feel like we're not
Yeah.
achieving them,
Yeah.
then we've got a lot of feelings to process, but maybe we
Yeah.
don't really know why.
You know what? I'm going to alter what I said earlier because as you've been talking, I realized something. It's like, yes, some things are goal oriented, but I think more things are strategy oriented. So what I mean by that, to just come back to your original hypothesis, is, you know, a lot of times we have strategies just to get through our lives. Like we have strategies like, oh, I want to be the funniest person in the room if we're all working towards something. Or I want my reputation to be the one that I have a strategy that anyone can come to me and talk to me and I won't be judgmental. Like, okay, that's a strategy for me, whether you call it that or not. I mean, using the word strategy is almost can seem perhaps triggering or maybe a little conniving. And I don't mean it like that. I don't mean it like that at all.
No,
I just mean I think the way we try to fit in, we have strategies about how we try to do that.
Yeah. Well, and what I heard you say more is like, I want to live kind of according to some core values, or I want to be the kind of
is
person
a strategy.
that, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think we all have those. Yep. Right. Yeah. So, you know, I think that if we all can sort of align with what that would be for ourselves, what do you do when that strategy doesn't work?
Yeah, well,
or stops working when it always did.
What I was really thinking about is how do you know it's not working?
Yes.
And that's the observation part, like both like external and internal observation to me.
Yeah.
So like a personal example for me is our middle kid is a bit more challenging than the other two. And for years when he was younger, we would just like apply the same parenting technique that worked on the other two kids.
Oh, sure.
And which was the parenting technique that our parents used on me and Amber respectively, right? So just kind of like action, consequence, sort of like almost like probably what almost everyone had as their sort of like way of parenting. And over a couple of years, like it.
By the way, I love how you think that. That is so sweet that that's what you think.
What?
That's how everyone has. But that's how you had, and you were very, very fortunate. Okay, next.
Well, so that technique did not work on Elliot, but it took us a while to
figure it out.
Figure that out, and then we had to change our tactics on how we approach like behavior issues and things like that with him. So we had to like learn a whole new set of skills to do it. It was like kind of contrary to what our gut was telling us to do.
Yeah.
Because because you're kind of like programmed to parent a little bit like your parents did,
totally,
right?
Yeah.
So we had to like kind of override that default programming with like a new way to do it. And it was really hard. I mean, it was hard to make that change. Now that we've done it, I think it's better.
Yeah. But I think that's true though. I mean, so that's one time where you have to shift out of a strategy when it just isn't working the way that you want it to, or it's rendering results that are not helpful. Yep. But I think that's it's so hard to emotionally make that shift in the moment when you're already kind of in pain about it.
Totally. It was, all of those circumstances were already like high emotion times. So and it took a while. That's the other thing is it like this change took a while, like years.
What do you think are the emotions or the check marks that tell you this plan that I had isn't going to plan? Like this strategy that we have, this way of thinking, this this move that we've made,
Yeah.
it isn't going well. What do you think are the markers of that? How do you know it's not going well? Like, when do you call uncle?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. Because
Right.
sometimes or I wouldn't say sometimes, probably most of the time, the default thinking is just keep going. Like, it'll
Yes.
get better if we just keep at
Yeah.
it, stick
Right.
to it,
We're
stick
not
to
doing
your
it quite
guns.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All this
Um,
head game stuff.
it's like there's a conflict between
Yeah.
the like a good core value of being persistent,
Mm-hmm.
like, right?
Mm-hmm.
Persistence is a good trait.
Especially if you're in your situation, you're talking about parenting in this example. I
Mhm.
mean, we have 100, but this particular example, you're talking about parenting. And so I think you're right. One of the key tenets of parenting is consistency.
Yeah.
So you have this idea that I have to parent very consistently. And if this child isn't picking up what we're putting down, it's not because we're doing anything wrong,
Mhm.
but we have to continue to be consistent until they get it. But at
Yeah.
some point, you're saying what we were deciding to do wasn't best for him or us.
Or us. Yeah.
So, I think we have to reach a certain level of pain, a certain level of
Mhm.
uncomfortableness in something that we've chosen as our game plan.
Yeah.
We have to reach a certain level of uncomfortableness. And sometimes it's super obvious
Mm.
that it isn't working. Other times it's a lot more subtle that it's
Yeah.
not working. You just don't feel good. Like
Yeah.
something in your gut is telling you something's just not right. And what is it like, and what do I have to do with this? Like, what should I be thinking
Mhm.
about or doing differently now so that we can turn the ship around?
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of times in our lives when we're right here.
Yeah. For us, like, especially in the parenting example, it's what I noticed is that we would parent in a certain way, but the results of that were went the opposite way that we wanted, right?
Oh, okay. Oh, that's another great indicator,
Right.
right?
But
Oh,
more
yeah.
than that, it's like the level of emotional reaction, both from us and from him, just every time it happened, got higher and higher and higher.
Oh, yeah.
It's right,
Yeah.
the waves, the swells on those emotional ups and downs
Yeah.
got bigger and bigger and bigger to
Oh.
the point where oh my gosh, this is like a tsunami every time. Every
Yeah.
time the littlest thing happens, it's the biggest reaction. And we're like, that can't be right. Right?
Oh, that sounds so hard.
So that's when we
Yeah.
started exploring, okay, if it's causing this much reaction for both sides,
Right.
that must not be right. It just didn't, and it felt terrible all the time.
Oh, yeah. The example that you've used is really a personal example, and I really appreciate you talking about it because I know it can be a challenge. I think there's a lot of times that this idea happens not just in really personal things. I mean, I think it also happens at work all the time.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I do for a living is strategic planning.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of times where a company or a group or a team or a leadership executives will say, we have to plan something. We have to plan our strategy. What is that supposed to look like? And just like you in your example with parenting, you're making decisions about what something should look like, not based on fact, but based on kind of knowingness, kind of some experience, but really not knowing what the future holds. And I think that's a huge component of being able to be in that strategy mindset when you're first creating it. However, a quarter later or a half a year later or the next year when you're doing that conversation again and it didn't work out, there's a lot of emotion about that.
Yep.
If that strategy that you collectively made as a professional team didn't work, or the end result wasn't what maybe it kind of worked, but nothing like what you thought would happen.
Yeah. My observation at work is that it is pretty, I'm not say easy, but it's pretty straightforward to have a group of people, you step back, you come up with a strategy, and everyone's like, yes, we're so smart. Like, this is where we're going. And then, like you said,
Yeah.
fast forward a year,
Yeah.
everyone like completely forgets the strategy.
Yeah.
I mean, fast forward 3 weeks and people completely forget the strategy, and then they just are like acting out of default reaction mode or something.
Craziness. They're acting crazy. That's funny. But I think groupthink is a real thing. You know, sometimes when we're unsure of our go forward plan, it feels better if there's a whole team of people talking each other into it. You know, and I think even at home with 2 parents versus 1, because there's many single family home, you know, single parent homes, and they don't have a group think. They have to choose on their own and create some kind of strategy. And if it doesn't work, it's okay to shift the strategy, you know?
Yeah.
And like as I'm talking about with these leadership teams, the interesting emotion that I see a lot is sort of this judgment, judging on past decisions, or feeling the need to justify why something didn't work. That's a really big one I see. Like they feel like they have to justify why their thinking, even as a team, didn't give them the results that they wanted, you know? And so those emotions can hold people in place from shifting strategy when they want to or need to or simply can for better outcomes. You know, it's so the judgment and the self stories, the story we're telling ourselves about why we chose a certain path, and now it's time to get off that path, but the stories we then tell ourselves about getting off that path.
Yeah. At work, the thing that I always think is a little funny when I observe it is that everyone likes to think that they're so logical and they're using their rational brain, and they're like, we're all so like we've thought this through all the way, and and the fact
brightest
is
bulb
like,
in the room.
So many of us, me included, are making these decisions more based on feeling and emotion than we are on like logic.
Yeah.
And when I see it happening, and again,
that's so
I
true.
want to remind everybody, like, hey, you know what our company is? It's a whole bunch of humans trying to do stuff. This is not like computers executing code. These are people doing their best with all of their squishy emotions and everything involved.
And all their own agendas, because everybody has their own agenda. I mean, in that room, you probably have different department heads that are all focused on their department.
And
so, of course,
they value different things.
Yeah.
You know, we had recently Steve, who's a guy that ran one of my businesses, retired.
Yeah.
And for a couple of years, our strategy for that business was to shift it more into like the government market. Like that was our primary strategy for a couple of years. And this past couple of years, he didn't do it. Like he'd kind of tried to do it, but he never got the business from where it was to where I wanted it to be. Even though we all sat down every year, had a great strategy session. It was very clear. And it wasn't until he decided to retire that in that last 6 months after he kind of let go of responsibility, that we made that whole entire shift in like 6 months. I mean, what took years of him kind of resisting. I would say resisting, because for him, he took the business, you know, he's very responsible about the business and the employees and everything. And so he was kind of holding on to the old strategy, what he knew worked, what market was, you know, keeping that business healthy for a lot of years. And he didn't want to take the risk.
Right.
But I wanted him to take the risk.
Right. Yeah.
I asked him to take the risk, but he emotionally just couldn't get there until he let go of the sort of long-term responsibility for the business. That's
a really good way to say that.
And boom, it all shifts right away. So that's the other thing about this, like, are you making strategy changes and what might be blocking those? And again, it's not because Steve rationally didn't understand what we were trying to do.
Right.
He just emotionally couldn't get there, but for a really great reason.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think we all hit those different pockets, don't we? It's like, and there you are being more flexible and, you know, just allowing. And I think that's a really key emotion that needs to happen when we make these shifts. And recognizing that, you know what, it's due. It's time. It's time for us to do this, and not being afraid to or putting it off. Because I think, like in the story that you were talking about with your son, the more that you hang on to it, it just gets harder and harder. And I've always said that. I always say your life lesson is just going to come back at you more and more and more. And it's going to get bigger examples until finally something happens where you go, oh,
yeah,
you know?
And I would say, like, I like, you know, obviously you and I love business strategy, right?
Yeah,
This
I know
is like
we do.
the thing we do.
We do that for fun.
But I love thinking about this topic in the context of your personal life, because I don't think we do enough. And it can be little things too. It's like, is our dinner routine working?
Yeah.
You know, is the way I approach homework with my kids working?
Yeah. Is it time to change something? Yeah.
Is it time? Is what this is the result of whatever I'm doing, like a positive or negative interaction? And if it's continually negative, that's maybe a thing to reevaluate how you're approaching it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's a great question. And I think that this has given me a lot to think about, actually. I really like that. It's like, and I think, you know, like I can tell there's certain things that I feel exhausted just thinking about, you know, in my regular personal life. It's like, oh, this needs to get done, or it's time for me to do X or whatever. Or I see patterns and I can feel this instant, right?
Yeah.
Like, and maybe those are the things that would be really interesting to say.
Yeah.
Is your level, because do we do it because is it laziness that makes us not want to? Is it, I don't know what it is.
I think it's a lot of things. I think there's a lot of things that we can reflect on.
Yeah. But that's a great thing. It's like, it's a really good thing to think about. What strategies is it time to shift up?
Did you enjoy this episode? Please go to your favorite podcast platform to subscribe, rate, and leave a review so others can discover it as well.
Growing self-awareness is a lifelong journey, and there's always further to go. And it's better when we're all in it together. Please think of someone you know who could benefit from hearing today's conversation and share this episode with them. We can't thank you enough for listening. Until next time, happy exploring, seekers.